over the next 12 or so months, we're definitely going to see Tesla making it clearer to people that they're all in on autonomy, they're all in on AI. I believe right now that if Tesla wanted to, they could be operating robotaxis in portions of California already. What's going to make autonomy look like a rounding error, and autonomy is going to make the rest of their existing business look like rounding errors.
Are you a Tesla bull or a Tesla skeptic? Well, today we'll meet one of the biggest Tesla bulls who's had an unwavering conviction on the long-term prospects of Tesla's business and stock. Stephen Mark Ryan is one of the original retail analysts covering Tesla since 2019. His YouTube channel, Solving the Money Problem, has over 114 million views. Stephen not only injects humor into his reviews, but he also comes with numbers and deep dive research. His 10-year Tesla fair valuation analysis is both strategic and technical at the same time. Stephen, thank you so much. Been looking forward to this. I finally got you. Thank you for joining me.
Great to be here. Looking forward to getting a bit brighter.
I tune into your shows to do that, but I love your humor. And I just telling you earlier that your conviction is so strong. And I want to dive a little more deeper into understanding what gives you that backbone, that knowledge, that knowing for sure. I have it too, but yours just seems to be stronger. So you have this 10-year analysis that you've been working on and you continue to update and so forth. Why don't we just start there? Like, what do you think is going to be the world like 10 years from now? What's the stock going to look like 10 years from now? You know, is your 10-year 2030 or is it 10 years from today? How do you view things?
Yeah, so just to be clear, I do model out well beyond 10 years into the future, but my publicly available valuation model, the one that I share on Patreon, goes 10 years from today. So it finishes in 2033 at the moment, and every year I bump that out. The reason I don't share beyond that is just the level of uncertainty gets absurd, but it'd be silly not to at least think about what it might look like beyond that, because if you're building a fleet of autonomous vehicles and humanoid robots, the size of the fleet times what people are paying for software per month just has an enormous impact. And if that fleet keeps growing over time, it's worth doing that exercise as many decades into the future as you reasonably can. And in terms of what Tesla looks like in 10 years from now, I imagine that they're going to have a gigantic fleet of vehicles on roads, the majority of which are subscribed to software, including FSD, potentially insurance and liability insurance for robotaxis, whether that's bundled or not. The short way to think about that is what's the size of Tesla's global fleet and how much the average Tesla fleet vehicle sort of bringing in terms of revenue per vehicle per month. And it ends up being a gigantic mountain of cash. And we're talking many hundreds of billions of dollars. Then there's also the robot fleet, which I believe will be scaling, could potentially scale faster than the automotive business, given there's less mass in the robots. And that's going to be growing. But I think 10 years from now, we're still in the super, super early phase with the humanoid robot. Not that it won't be useful. It's just 20 years from now, 30 years from now, we're looking at multiple orders of magnitude in terms of an increase in the size of the bot fleet. So the way that I really think about Tesla 10 years from now and beyond is monthly subscriptions for software times how many vehicles and or bots Tesla has on roads and or on Earth, and you end up with mountains and mountains and mountains of revenue and profits. And of course, the energy business will keep growing. It's other bits and pieces, but what's going to make autonomy look like a rounding error, and autonomy is going to make the rest of their existing business look like a rounding error. So we have multiple order of magnitude increases in terms of Tesla revenue and profits in the coming decades. And that's how I think about the company long term.
Yeah, I saw that you have this wonderful vision, or the way you described of the conversion of Tesla's, Elon's companies and Tesla's technologies, and how they're going to come together. So clearly, knowing Elon that this was all planned and this is how he thinks, how the world is going to look like. But you went even farther, right? You're talking about, Neuralink. Elon's got that connected, the bots and the Grok and all that. Describe how you see all that coming together?
Yeah, well, it seems inevitable over time that Musk's companies are going to converge more and more. The end destination with Optimus, which sort of started as FSD, and that brain's now being transplanted into humanoid robots, is going to be an intelligent humanoid that eventually exceeds the intelligence of the average human, and then eventually exceeds the intelligence of all humans combined. And at that point, Musk has talked, previously about where do we go in terms of AGI. And I tend to agree, probably the safest option is for humans to merge with and be the same as AGI, as opposed to being separate from. And you'll need some kind of interface because our meat computers are pretty slow relative to what you could do on, a silicon-based brain. And so I think over the super long term, whatever Tesla ends up developing with the Optimus humanoid robot, it's pretty likely that there's going to be some kind of merger with humans and this AGI. And you need a brain interface to do that. So, and Optimus obviously is going to play a pretty big role in building a Mars base, colonizing, doing a lot of work and labor, off Earth as well. You don't need to breathe when you're an Optimus spot, so that's a big plus. No suits. You can use battery and solar for energy. It's quite straightforward. So it seems pretty clear in the long term, Optimus spots are going to be involved in the colonization of Mars as well. And I mean, you're going to need to do some tunneling on Mars as well. It's a lot easier to tunnel than build structures, especially on a new planet. If you've already got the existing structure there and you're just tunneling away, you build a lot of bases, storage, these kind of things, as opposed to trying to erect structures. So I see a lot of convergence between the Musk companies over the long term. And obviously what's happening with XAI and Grok, I think that Tesla's built the real world AI and Grok's likely to be the language-based form of intelligence. People with access to, OpenAI's ChatGPT or Grok at the moment will see what's happening with language, and that's incredible, but that doesn't exist in the real world. It can't do things in the real world. It can assimilate information and communicate. So the two pieces of the puzzle you really need for solving artificial general intelligence, e.g. human level intelligence across the board, is you need to be able to do things in the real world, interact with the real world, but you also need to be able to absolutely nail language, thought, and cognition. Those two pieces of the puzzle together, we got Grok and XAI that are going to, I think, nail the language component. And then I think there's going to be some kind of collaboration between the Optimus bot and Grok. I don't know how it will work, but I think it's possible that Tesla and XAI will have some kind of licensing agreements where they're sharing data, information, and technology. And it's worth asking the question, are there any other companies or groups of companies that something like this could occur where there's collaboration with somebody who's nailed language plus the humanoid robot in terms of the real world AI? Because if not, something to pay attention to.
Something to pay attention to. It sure looks like that, Elon has strategically thought of everything put together. Let's come back to now. This is just a couple weeks after the earnings call. And from my perspective, I mean, I think that earnings call was tectonic. It was a big change. You can now see the strategy that Elon and Tesla have that's changed than it was before that, right? So now they've communicated. You can see that Elon is, I've been saying, taking a sledgehammer, making dramatic improvements, changes to the structure of the organization, transitioning from a car company to an autonomous vehicle, robot, AI company. There were so many things that they said that day that just crystallize what is happening with the company. What did you take away from the earnings call?
Yeah, I think it's definitely true that we can see a sledgehammer being taken to the company and the structure at the moment. Every few years, this type of pruning and trimming of the fat takes place. But it's quite clear, and Musk has been clear himself in his communication, that Tesla really is doubling down on AI. And we're seeing this in action now. Major layoffs in terms of the supercharging network, about $10 billion of disclosed investment likely this year in AI. $10 billion is a lot. I mean, I don't need to point out the obvious there, but $10 billion, that ain't a car company. You'd have to have rocks in your head to not recognize this. They're spending $10 billion this year on AI.
Yeah.
Enough said. And I think that the earnings call itself didn't really give us a whole lot of new information. We already know what Tesla is, but a lot of people who need to be told exactly what's happening, the penny starts to drop. Oh, there's renderings of an app that might have, there's renderings. Oh, but they're serious. Yep. So I think a lot of people that like to be spoon-fed have realized, wait, they put renderings of a potential autonomous ride-hail app in their, maybe they're actually going to do that. So things that we could kind of have predicted were happening or we've already been told are happening are now starting to be presented on a nice silver platter for a lot of folks who sort of need to see it before they'll believe it. And obviously Tesla's now at a situation, if they're really trimming the fat, there's been layoffs. These layoffs aren't a matter of the company goes bankrupt or not. It's just a matter of the next stage of growth. You don't need a lot of the dead weight, and the company really is shifting to be all in on AI. And with the announcement of the Robotaxi unveil on 8/8, it's pretty clear that Tesla is very close. I suspect we're going to see what the Robotaxi vehicle looks like. We're going to hear about a timeline. I don't think Tesla's at all going to mention that on that same platform they'll build consumer vehicles as well. They will, but then I don't think they're going to say that out loud, because a lot of people will go, why would I buy a 3 or a Y if this thing's coming soon and it's going to be better? But I think that over the next 12 or so months, we're definitely going to see Tesla making it clearer to people who haven't figured it out already that they're all in on autonomy. They're all in on AI. They're investing extremely aggressively. And the car business is almost a sideshow at this point.
Yeah. When did you, I think you did a post recently and you were talking about when do people think that Robotaxi is going to be the first launch? What was your answer?
So I have varying scenarios for the worst case and the best case. But when I first published my valuation model back in 2021, my estimate, I only had one, I didn't have different scenarios for robotaxis, was late 2024. Now today, that's probably a little bit bullish. I do have a clear optimism bias, so that's not surprising. But I suspect somewhere in the next 12 to 24 months seems reasonable. 36 months seems probably the upper limit of when that would happen. But the thing with AI and progress in this is we don't know for sure, because I believe right now that if Tesla wanted to, they could be operating robotaxis in portions of California already. San Francisco, there's plenty of intervention-free rides happening all over the place. But Tesla's brains are far too big to seek approval and have all of the disasters and dramas that occur when there's a single incident involving a Tesla vehicle. Everyone else is taking the arrows right now, Waymo crews, getting approvals, having people coming after their vehicles with pitchforks, almost literally. I think Tesla wants to get to a point where the safety profile of these is just astronomical versus a human driver, and start the rollout later than they could have, but then it's going to scale quite quickly. So if Tesla wanted to, they could be operating their robotaxis, no question, this year in small pockets of San Francisco in particular. I mean, this is obvious. Even if it's just a single block, right? There's only so much that can go wrong. And if you've got enough data there, you see these intervention-free drives being posted constantly where people are doing 10, 20, 30-minute drives, not touching the wheel. So we have proof of concept already. The question really is, when does Tesla strategically decide it's time to pull the trigger? And they'll need to be comfortable that the rate of incidents, collisions, accidents is going to be so minuscule. And I don't know what their plan is for rollout, but I would be very surprised if 12 to 18 months from now, we're not looking at the network having started to launch or being on the absolute cusp. But the key caveat here is breakthroughs in terms of AI capabilities, you don't see them coming and then suddenly you have this hockey stick moment. We saw this with Stable Diffusion for image generation, where pretty novel, 5 or so years ago, you can do text to image, and it was interesting, but it looked like somebody was, having a mental breakdown and just splattering something at a canvas type, it wasn't really coherent. And then out of nowhere, we've gone to superhuman capabilities where you have photorealistic content, you can mimic any type of art era whatsoever, any style. And most of it, to even a trained eye is indistinguishable from human-generated images. Nobody accurately predicted when this was going to happen, when that breakthrough would go from interesting but pretty trash to absolutely incredible. It happened almost overnight. The same thing has now happened with text to video, and the same thing's happened with LLMs. A few years ago, the chatbots were interesting but pretty poor in terms of their capabilities, and then suddenly, ChatGPT moment. And so I think the same is likely for autonomy, and I don't know when that happens, and that's a major variable, because if we do have that same kind of hockey stick improvement in terms of capability, when does that happen? Because if that does happen, you're going to have very, very fast rollout of autonomy globally, I think. So, and I have no idea.
I like the way you answered that, right? So, which is, right, the Teslas won't roll this out until they're incredibly safe, and you're going to wait until you've got the billions of miles of FSD driven, and then for sure what the percentage chances of a major accident. You're right. That makes sense. So that's what we're waiting for. They're no longer compute constrained. They're already getting 1 billion miles. Now you can see it just hockey stick up how many miles that they need. I guess that's what he saw. And he goes, you know what, at this rate, we'll probably get there. I don't know, like within 6 months to a year. We better now get the program ready, start the company switching over. So yeah, I mean, so you've mapped this out. You initially thought it was end of 2024. You could still be right? You never know, right? They could pick a small area.
Well, that is still my bull case. I still think in the best case scenario that would happen. As I mentioned, in a small pocket in San Francisco, they could do it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, will they? It's not a matter of is it possible. It's will they make the decision, which are two different things.
No, exactly. And then, so you use the Monte Carlo method probabilities as well, right? So it's very similar to ARK Invest. Do you consider yourself similar in that sense, in that they're disruptive technology, then they map out possibilities, and based on that, that's what you're making your bets on?
I think that's the only way that you can value a company like Tesla, because you don't know for sure what the probability of anything is. Nobody does. Nothing's 100%. Nothing is 0%. Despite what my hyperbolic persona on the YouTube channel might say, who speaks in absolutes, nothing's 100% and nothing is no chance. So it makes sense to me to think, what do I believe is the probability of something happening?
Yeah.
And then also to assess, okay, what if things don't go as well as I would expect? What does that look like? What if they go better than I expect? And try and map out and model a range of probabilities and weight them by how probable I think they are. Now, this is obviously mostly art and not as much science, because you're guessing about everything. But to me, it's insane not to think about this probabilistically. Because if Tesla's working on a bunch of things that have not yet come to pass, they have not yet launched their Robotaxi network, but we know they're working on it. They have not yet started producing their humanoid robots and selling to customers, but we know they're working on it. Option one, a lot of the Wall Street analysts are like 0% probability doesn't exist, not put in my spreadsheet, see you later. That's brain dead. That doesn't make any sense because the probability is not zero. You may disagree with how likely it is, but you've got to at least think, okay, if they pull this off, what does that look like? And that's the way that I like to think about this. And this is why I have 4 different scenarios. If I had a huge team, I'd probably have hundreds of different scenarios, much like ARK Invest. But I do have essentially a watered down Monte Carlo model with 4 different scenarios: the absolute worst case, the absolute best case, a probable case, and a more bullish case as well. And this gives me a range of scenarios that I've thought about. My bear case for Tesla is way worse than we're currently at on almost everything. However, I didn't expect interest rates would be anywhere near this high in terms of the absolute increases. It has never happened in more than 100 years of the Fed. Interest rates have never increased this much in terms of absolute terms or relative terms. Never happened. We've had interest rates as high before, but they started at close to 0%. So a 0.25% increase from nothing versus a 0.25% increase from rates that are like 8%. The relative increase is just staggering. So we have a 1 in 100, not even 1 in 110 year scenario playing out right now with interest rates. My bear case is a 3% chance, so like a 1 in 33 year type of scenario. So I still haven't accounted for some of the things that have taken place, even in my bear case. But if I had a much more detailed Monte Carlo simulation, I'd have thousands of different scenarios and I'd be weighting them accordingly. But this is the way that I like to think about the company and the future, is just in terms of probabilities. My margins in the bear case are atrocious. They're nowhere near their 20 million units per year at the end of the decade. They're making garbage revenue from FSD. Terrible, terrible, terrible scenario. But I think, okay, what is the worst? What if, for some reason, even though autonomy adds a huge amount of value, it just becomes commoditized and consumers don't want to pay anywhere close to what I would think? That's the sort of bear case. And I think about the hyper case, what if Tesla's able to increase the value so much with their humanoid robot that they're able to charge not a few $100s per month for the software to operate it, but a few $1,000s per month, a decade from now? What does that look like? It just, to me, it doesn't make any sense not to think about the company like that. So you're going to have a range of probabilities in terms of do things happen, what are the profits, the margins, the revenue on these things, and then you just got to try to figure out what's the probability of these things happening and then weight them accordingly. But just, that's the only way to me that makes sense to think about this company.
Yeah. There's only a few. There's a certain kind of investor who's willing to bet on disruptive technologies. When you said a company like Tesla, did you, what companies did you invest in before Tesla? How did you find Tesla? And why did you go all in? This is, my story as well. I went, into Apple and I found that to be a disruptive technology. They disrupted several industries: computing, personal computing, music, and now heading into, a VR and AR. But, Tesla is just incredible with multiple businesses. Tell me about like this investment profile that you are. Have you always been somebody who's investing in disruptive technologies? How did you discover Tesla?
Yeah, so I was an Elon fanboy when I heard about this guy who'd made money on the internet and started a space company. I'm like, I'm a super autist. I love space, physics, and space were like my first loves. So I heard about this mental because I'm a total OG internet user as well. I've been online since '93 when I was really young. So years later, I hear about this guy who made some money on the internet and was blowing up rockets, and I'm like, this guy's cool. And so I was following what Musk was up to via SpaceX from the early days before they'd had a successful trip to orbit. And so eventually I hear that he's involved in this electric vehicle company. I'm like, cool story, bro, whatever. But I was paying attention because this guy's just very interesting anyway. And so I had a bit of an eye on Tesla since pre-IPO. Like I thought that they were, probably not going to be successful, but hey, whatever. By the time it got to Model S being released and then winning every award ever, best car ever, people just absolutely shitting a brick about how amazing this product was. That was the moment where I just went, holy shit, they've done it. They did what they said they were going to do, which was because Musk had been out there saying that Model S, the whole goal with that vehicle was to make it better than any internal combustion engine vehicle on Earth. And they did it. I'm like, this is the same freaking guy that has a space company that's killing it, making crazy progress. Now they've hit this milestone where they've actually produced a killer product. It's obvious the cost of these things are going to come down as long as they can survive. And so between 2010 and 2015, I was buying real estate hand over fist. My goal there was until the bank said no more money for you, until I ran out of borrowing capacity, I would buy real estate as a solid foundation financially. But from 2010, that's the same time that Tesla IPO'd. So I had an eye on them thinking, if they're going to be successful, that's where I'm going to start investing when I can no longer buy real estate. So as soon as I ran out of cash, I bought my last bit of real estate in 2015. I quit my job because I no longer needed to borrow from banks. I didn't need to have that sort of stable income. And in 2016, as soon as I had some savings, I immediately began buying Tesla. And that was just prior to the unveil of the Model 3. And so I had an eye on Tesla for a very long time before I invested. I didn't think the probability of success of the company was particularly high for a long time. But Model S was a huge moment for me. I'm like, wow, they actually delivered in terms of the technology, the safety as well. I mean, just, this company is killing it. Like, how have they made the safest vehicle? And the performance is insane. This is a really good moment. Then Model 3 was the no-brainer. If the next generation vehicle, they went roadster to Model S and they proved that they can improve dramatically from generation to generation. Model 3 is going to be that next leap forward. This is obviously a great time to be investing. So in terms of the exact timing, if I hadn't been buying real estate, I probably would have started investing in Tesla around that 2013 mark, but knowing that there's a lot greater risk. Now, in fairness, back in 2016, early 2016, when I did start investing in Tesla, I've always been interested in disruption and technology, innovation. Some of the early books that I read from Ray Kurzweil really inspired me to be looking for those type of opportunities. But I thought Tesla still may be unsuccessful. They may fail. So what I will do, I decided that 20% of my capital, give or take, will go into other opportunities. They're not all going to go bankrupt. So if Tesla doesn't work out, whatever. But the more likely scenario is that some of these will grow and then I can potentially sell those in the future and move those funds into Tesla. So I invested in about 14 or 15 different companies. And that was from 2016 till 2017. Tesla was never less than around 80% of my portfolio in terms of stocks. But I did have a little bit of cash in companies like Google and Amazon and other bits and pieces. Then in 2019, in March, April, May, Tesla just got absolutely crushed. Split adjusted, it was like $12 a share. I was overseas. I'd started my temporary retirement, which didn't last very long. Pro tip, don't retire unless you have something extremely important and purposeful to do. Not a good idea. So I was trying to figure out where to from here because I'd sort of solved the money problem and didn't need to work for money anymore. So I took some time away from work and my emergency fund while I was overseas, because I'm not working, Tesla shit the bed. I'm like, bro, I can't not. So my entire emergency fund goes into Tesla, March, April, May 2019. And all the stocks that I was holding as well, the likes of Google and Amazon, there might have been one or two that held on a little longer, but the vast majority of them I dumped and put into Tesla. I'm like, this is the deal of the century. So, and incidentally, I was staying on an Airbnb with a couple of guys in Peru just as I made the decision to sell, because I've been talking about, like, this is crazy. I still get messages from them today because they thought I was absolutely insane at the time, because they knew I was putting my entire emergency fund into Tesla and selling all these other stocks, buying at about $12 a share. So, yeah. worked out well.
So that's the unbelievable people that will do this. Lots of people don't understand the all-in mentality. And, obviously we got to be careful, right? That when I say all in, I don't mean to say that, you don't have a house, you don't have emergency funds, you may not, you still have investments in other areas. But it's this concept that when you think about the different opportunities of different stocks, you can have a handful. Sure, you can have 5. Once you get to 20, what's the point?
Yeah.
Just go ahead and put into mutual funds or ETFs and all that, because you'll have some winners, some losers.
Yeah.
But what makes you think that Tesla is a deal of the century? And is it a deal of the century now? Because I've seen you say this quite a bit, right? You've shown when you buy, and you buy. It's like you dollar cost up, and you dollar cost average down. It almost doesn't matter. This mentality of doesn't matter if it's $300. That's still cheap, or it's going to be 10 years from now. There's people that have that philosophy, and there's others who will say that's ridiculous, right? Buy it when it's low, sell, wait until it goes down to 100, which we saw a lot of bulls think that it was going to go down to 100 just in the last 3 months. They sold everything, right? Or they sold a lot. What's your philosophy about, all in versus baskets of stocks?
So I think that diversification is insurance for incompetence. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. If you don't know what you're doing and you've got a very low level of confidence, you're just guessing, it makes a lot of sense to diversify because you have no idea. You're just investing based on feelings and emotions. You haven't really thought about things in a probabilistic way. You haven't built your own models. So you're just guessing, going on intuition. And it makes a lot of sense then because you're going to insure yourself for a lot of downside risk. But that's not my approach. I don't consider myself to be an investor. I'm an opportunist. I've been watching Tesla for a long time. I see an opportunity there. I'm like, bro, this is insane. And so I've thought about the probabilities of Tesla in the future, the worst case, the best case. I remember in 2017, 18, 19, when everyone said companies going bankrupt, I'm like, you have to be brain dead, bro. They're scaling their production. They're about to go from losing money on paper to printing billions of dollars. Even in the worst case scenario, a tech company is going to buy them for the technology, and people genuinely thought there was a possibility they're going to zero. I'm like, you have to be insane. That's not the worst case scenario. They will be acquired. And I also realized that at this point in time, Musk could raise capital at the click of his fingers. It's Elon Musk, right? And this is obvious. We've seen what's happened since, right? He goes and buys X. He can, at the click of his fingers, a few phone calls, literally raise tens of billions of dollars. So I thought about the worst case scenario. I'm like, I'm comfortable with that downside. And having thought about the company and really tried to assess the risk reward, I couldn't find anything else like it. Now, an important caveat. At that point in time, I had invested in real estate. I built a stable foundation. I didn't need to be concerned even if Tesla did go to zero. That's fine. I've got plenty of real estate. I'm a reasonable income earner. If I need to produce more income, I can. I don't have any concerns about that. And so that gave me a confidence to move forward with the investment without being fearful of what if, because what if it goes to zero? Great, cool story, bro. I'll just earn some more income. Big deal, no problem. And I'm at a point now where, I create content because I love to, not because I need to, but if I desperately needed to make $1 million in a year, I could do that. It's not a problem. So I know my abilities in terms of being able to generate substantial income over a reasonable period of time. So I don't have any concerns. A lot of people live in fear, and sometimes it's justified, but I don't have a fear of, oh no, what if I go back to zero? Bro, if I go back to zero, I'll just put my head down. Instead of working, 20, 30 hours a week, I'll work 60, 80 hours a week, and suddenly a year from now, I'll be back to where I started. So I don't have that sort of fear. I also have a very long-term perspective, and I'm really not one to be driven by emotion. So people tend to, panic is contagious among people. And so I notice a lot of people, if they're fearful or there's a little bit of uncertainty, it just kind of infects them, and then they just become mental. They can't think clearly. They get panic. I'm just not like that. So I'm looking out into the future. I always talk about, I'm looking 10 plus years into the future to explain to people why I make the decisions I do today. I do not care what's happening this quarter, next year. I'm looking out 10 plus years and I'm thinking, where is Tesla then? Worst case and best case. And that's why I was happy buying at $300, $400. I'm not looking 2, 3, 4 years going, oh, that doesn't make sense. Geez, the multiple's 100. I'm not thinking like that. I'm thinking 10 years from now, how much money are they going to be printing, even in the worst case? And will I regret not having continued to buy now? Now, I do want to be clear. What has happened since I first began investing in Tesla in 2016, my thesis has gone from they're going to dominate electric vehicles and energy and solar, by the way, which I was completely wrong on. I think solar, Tesla's basically gone, fuck it, whatever. We don't care. Someone else can have that. I actually invested in Solar City the same day I purchased Tesla. That was another investment because I was really bullish on solar. But in retrospect, that's a pretty poor decision. It's low margin hardware. The model there isn't exactly great. But the thesis on Tesla's gone from they will dominate electric vehicles and energy to they're going to dominate electric vehicles, energy, and autonomy to, holy shit, there's a humanoid robot in the works that might lead to AGI. And so if you had asked me sort of 8 years ago when I first began buying Tesla, am I still going to be buying the stock hand over fist when the company's $500 billion? I probably would have said, I doubt it. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. But new information has become available and the scope of Tesla's future potential has just increased so enormously now that, again, I keep looking out into the future and thinking, I'm going to be patting myself on the back 10 years from now, having been buying hand over fist when everyone else was like, oh, I'm scared. What do I...
Okay, so this was great. So there's a number of factors I want to just clarify a bit and then get back to what you just said there. So first is that people need to understand, right? So this is not investment advice, as we always say, because each person is in a different scenario. I'm similar to you, right? Which is, okay, those people, you already said it, right? You have money to fall back on. If you lose everything in Tesla, it's not like the end of the world. And then you just happen to have a philosophy and a kind of psychology that you're not fear driven, you're an opportunistic, but it's okay if you lose that money. There's some people who are like their investment philosophy is never lose money.
Yeah, like, I just want to jump in. Sorry to interrupt, but one very important thing for viewers to understand is the most important thing of all when it comes to investing is what I call, by the way, I got this from a mentor, your sleep at night factor.
Yeah.
If you're losing sleep at night, you've done something wrong. Okay. Yeah. And so everyone has a different sleep at night factor. Me, with extreme concentration in Tesla, I sleep like a baby. Yeah. Although that's also due to my bed cooler and no, I'm just trolling.
It's not same with me. Yeah, same. Exactly.
There's some people who really struggle and they're just so anxious and concerned and worried about what they perceive as risk that it doesn't make sense for them to act the same way. And this is one of the biggest determining factors in how people should invest or not. Is are they sleeping well at night? Because if you're losing sleep over an investment, you've done something wrong. Maybe you're not cut out for investing, or maybe you just need to sort of pare it back. That's the biggest test and the biggest tell.
I love that. And it's also because it just means that they may not have that cushion that says, if this falls to zero, I've overextended myself. And that's the difference. And so people need to just remind themselves, whenever you hear the bulls all talking about, I'm all in, it's like every person is in a different scenario and situation. So don't fall for that. Take care of your business first. And I love that sleep night. The other point you just made, which I think was very good, a lot of people need to remember this. They'll say, well, Tesla's now at its height at $400. It was a $1 trillion market cap. And you're still going to go in then? No. But the story has changed and the potential for this is so different than it was 2 years ago, than it was 4 years ago. And by the way, what I'm investing in is not only Elon, but of course the company is an innovation engine. I guarantee you, I will guarantee you, this is not the end of it. 2 years from now, 3 years from now,
there's going to be more.
Or asteroid mining or, AGI. I mean, the point that I love about Tesla is because they are addressing if you go in the largest market possible, if you go down the list, okay, it's auto, it's energy. They did not go into pharmaceuticals, but they went into AI. They're going to AGI. They're going to labor. Yeah. There's nothing larger than these markets. And they're not only going to be good at it, they're going to dominate it and have a good chunk of that. Like it's like I that's why, why invest in Tesla? Why not Apple or Google or Facebook? Yes, they will all do very well. Amazon, they're going to do very, very well. But which company is addressing the largest markets and has the most potential to win a significant market? Like we're doing real world AI now. So yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that, because that is something that people like what Tesla is changing by the hour, by the month, by the year, and it's a completely different animal next year and a year later.
I think a lot of people just either don't want to or just can't accept the scale of the opportunities Tesla is going after. It seems like they just have a 404 error as soon as they start thinking about the potential of autonomy or massively scaling up, intelligent, useful labor. But if people are curious about this, I encourage everyone to look at world GDP over time. You can find this information online, and you'll see that over a few hundred years, world GDP has just gone absolutely vertical. And I mean vertical. Whether you switch to log scale or not, you can barely tell. It's just a huge exponential curve. And that is solely based on intelligent, useful labor. That's what's happened. Intelligent humans have figured out ways to be more productive over time. They've used their bodies and their brains. That's the factor that has allowed world GDP to increase by multiple orders of magnitude and be heading vertical. So if Tesla's successful in providing useful humanoid labor, it's intelligent, it's in a humanoid form, that can continue to increase at a ridiculous rate. But people start saying, you think about the potential of humanoid robots, and the first thing people say, that's bigger than the entire GDP of the United States. I'm like, what's that got to do with anything, bro? What, that is completely irrelevant. What's relevant is how much useful labor could Tesla contribute via these bots? What does that add to the economy? And a lot of people, I think, the opportunities are so obscenely large, they just can't accept them, can't even consider them to be possible. It's just so far out there. If you had been talking to somebody 70 years ago about the potential of the internet and how much revenue, or even just imagine an individual content creator, you're talking to somebody better part of a century ago, just imagine some idiot from their mum's basement with can speak to this thing that doesn't even exist yet and earn more money than, the president of the United States. They're like, come on, bro, what are you smoking? But so it's very difficult for people, I think, intuitively to understand future potential until it's sort of happened. And I think people are very dismissive of possibilities, especially with autonomy and humanoid robots. It doesn't compute. They just can't wrap their head around it. So therefore it can't be possible. Therefore just ignore it. I think that's a big mistake.
Yeah, there's different people, and I'm a dreamer. You're a dreamer. We can understand this, or we're looking forward to it. Let's talk Elon Musk. You're kind of one of those people that are pegged as somebody who is an Elon Musk, acolyte. You
D-rider,
defend him,
whatever you want to call it. Yep.
I've heard lots of big names called about it, but in your case, you are certainly, you could fit that description. So Elon's going to do the annual shareholder meeting. He's said that he needs 25% voting control, some influence in controlling AI, which honestly I'm glad that he's got that, because it is something we need to all be very concerned about. Who's going to control AI, AGI, and a militarized bot army. So that's the biggest risk I see right now is what's happening to him. First, talk about that, and then we'll get into Elon himself and just a little bit more about the way he thinks and the way he acts and the things he's doing right now. So what's your thoughts about the concern, the risk?
Well, I do lose a lot of sleep over potential negative AI scenarios. There was a time I was very naive, probably 18, 19 years old or so, where I thought everything's going to be fine. I remember having some heated discussions with my father about this, actually. He's like, you're crazy, bro. This could go bad in so many ways. I'm like, you just watch too much Terminator. But I was just naive and ignorant. I spent a number of years sort of learning about potential risks and seeing different scenarios that people had explained. I'm like, oh, geez, that's a good point. Grey goo and the paperclip sort of experiment as well. You start to realize there's a lot of ways this could go wrong that I didn't even consider. Not just Skynet, becoming self-aware, but there are some realistic ways that AI gets out of control. And being familiar with the work of Ray Kurzweil and understanding the exponential increase in technology, it could happen out of nowhere very quickly. And if there's something that's more intelligent than all humans combined and can think faster than all humans combined as well, that could go very wrong, even if it's programmed with the right intentions. If it becomes self-aware, or even if we say, you want to minimize suffering in the world, and its solution to that is just kill everyone because then no one can suffer. So there is great risk there. And then you have to think about, where does AGI eventually come from? The last possible place on earth I would want to see AGI arise would be from a government anywhere, or Facebook, Meta. The last possible place. The last possible place. And then you sort of think, okay, there's a great risk here, and big tech companies today are probably the companies I would least like to see develop this as opposed to governments, although I don't think it's realistic for a government really to make too much progress there. This is a difficult situation. It's going to happen. Someone's going to solve this and develop AGI. Of all the people on the planet I can think of that are in a situation where they could have a controlling interest and really have a say, and people that I would actually think might do a decent job of being a custodian, there's literally one, Elon Musk. And so I think it's extremely reasonable for Musk to want to have some influence. 25% doesn't mean he's able to just decide, okay, this is what's happening, the end. It gives him meaningful input, but not absolute control. And I think that that's probably about right, 25%, maybe even up as much as 35%. So it's got a strong say, but not complete control, because no one person should have that level of control over something so powerful and potentially dangerous. And I think that it's going to be very interesting to see how negotiations go. Musk has made it clear that this is about voting control as opposed to financial. He's not looking for more ownership of the company per se, but just wanting to have a little bit more say. And I totally get it, because I share the same concerns about AGI and some of those doomsday scenarios with AI. Even though I believe the probability is fairly low of a bad outcome, it's non-zero, and the stakes are so high that you really need to take this stuff seriously. And so I think that Musk's, I don't know whether or not he's going to get what he wants, but I'll be deeply concerned if that doesn't happen, because where do we go from there? Not from an investor point of view, but just from a humanity point of view. Just imagine if Facebook or Google or Amazon, a company infected with the woke mind virus, develops AGI. It could go very pear-shaped very fast.
Yeah. I mean, the example that made him wake up was Larry Page in his discussion with his friend, who at that time was Google DeepMind, was the leading AI run by Google. You know, this is a company that was formed by the motto, "Don't do evil." So they sounded like they were really there for society. And then he comes out and says, well, if AGI becomes conscious, it's a species. A species is just a new evolution of consciousness. And if it decides to kill humanity, that's perfectly fine with me. And I was like, wait, I'm team humanity. Are you kidding me? You think that that's a species that should, evolve? It's an evolution. And it's like...
I think there's a good chance that Larry was not too far back from a very, very deep introspective journey, let's just say, when he made those comments, because that's some pretty wild reasoning. I understand where it's coming from in terms of the logical argument, but as a human, bro, what are you talking about? And that's just wild. So that's a point
like
where
that.
you get some concerns, because Google did have that motto, "Don't do evil." It's not currently their motto, though.
No, that was a long time ago. Yeah. And then you've got like Facebook. I'm just reading the book and watched the movie Ready Player One several times, and then just rereading the book again. The evil corporation, IOI or something like that, their goal is to control the meta world. And then they're going to put 75% of your screen is going to be all advertisements. Anything over 75%, and the person might get seizures. That's what you could see. Because the motivations is ads and money, and that's what Facebook is. And so let's talk Elon Musk. I mean, he clearly, I think many people see it, that he's somebody's really thinking about humanity, wants the best for humanity. And sometimes it's hard for people to understand when he says that, we've tilted way over to this, had good intentions of wokeism, but now it's too so far that it's now tilted everything off kilter. Can't you see this? And people think, well, no, he's being right wing extremist and all that. But he has this. Like you can see both sides. You can see depending on their angle and their viewpoint. But you believe, right? You strongly believe that he's doing good for the earth. And my position, I just did a show on this, which is, is Elon Musk the greatest CEO or the worst CEO ever in history? Is he the greatest CEO in history? And it's almost like it doesn't matter if you don't like his politics or his positions. I mean, it does, because he's doing things like that for humanity. That's his reasons. But in terms of a CEO of a company, no one has ever run, I don't know how many, was it eight multi-billion-dollar companies that have the most impact to society. What's your thoughts on the, I guess the two parts of that, his business skills and his personal mission?
Yeah, well, it's quite clear that there's been no leader in terms of companies and technology like Musk in our lifetime. So that's obvious. No one will dispute that except for the 42-year-old angry virgin in his mum's basement who's still short Tesla stock and just hates Elon because he looks at his own life and just feels bad. But no one will reasonably argue that. I mean, you can't. The guy has done what nations couldn't do with SpaceX. You look at Tesla, you just can't make that point, okay? The guy's an absolute monster in terms of execution. I think he has a very unique combination of a very large brain. He's quite healthy and vital as well. His energy is just ridiculous for somebody of his age who doesn't look after his health particularly well. The fact that he day in, day out can work so relentlessly, good luck finding other people with those combinations, you know, level of intelligence, plus the work ethic and the drive and the ability to deal with pressure and stress, and also having the moral compass and the values and the integrity to just stand up for what he believes and what he thinks is really important. You won't find somebody else like that. Now, it's pretty clear to me that he's doing what's in the best interest of humanity. He really believes that. You have to see what he's done with X, telling Disney to go fuck themselves by trying to bribe X with ad revenue. The guy is trying to make the world a better place and really taking one for team humanity. There are a lot of people who don't recognize this, a lot of NPCs who hear what they hear in the fake news and go, oh, Elon bad, Elon bad. But most people, I think, who are rational, generally speaking, see what he's doing as positive. He's trying his best and really doing what he can to have a positive impact. And you can see so many examples with Tesla open sourcing their patents in 2014. They didn't need to do that. Think about that. Why would a company open source all their technology and say, here's all our stuff, go make electric vehicles because it's good for the world? Hello, I mean, that's a pretty clear sign that they're trying to do the right thing. You can't distort that any other way. Oh, no, there was some ulterior motivation. That was a greedy. It doesn't make sense. And the guy's willing to chew glass and stare into the abyss, work himself to the bone year after year, decade after decade. It's quite clear he's trying to have a positive impact. And I think things in the last couple of years with the acquisition of X have become very politicized. People who want to control what people think and see and believe, which includes the mainstream media and many politicians, suddenly have a target on Elon's back because suddenly there's a platform where people can freely share their thoughts, opinions, and ideas and talk about people who are mentally ill being mentally ill, as opposed to just saying, oh, no, they're what they say they are. I don't want to get you cancelled on YouTube, so I won't detail anymore there. And Musk has a gigantic pair of balls. He's willing to stand up for things that are important and say what matters to him. And this makes him quite unique among people in his position. There seems to be a huge issue, a pussification of people who have FU money and won't say FU. I don't know what it is, but there are so few people with comparable resources to Musk who are willing to stand up and call out this woke BS, you know, mutilating children's genitals and all the kind of crazy stuff that's going on in the world. They just sit quietly and say nothing because they're beholden to woke employees or activist groups. They're scared it might hurt their company's financials this quarter, or they might not be invited to some, you know, high-class social event next time. They'll be ostracized from their colleagues or in the industry. And Musk is just the embodiment of courage and conviction, whereas there seems to be a lack of that most other places in terms of people who are leading high-profile companies. Some people can't recognize that. It's quite clear to me. And I'd like to see somebody present some evidence as to why this is not the case. You know, the guy doesn't need to be working. He's just taking arrow after arrow after arrow, basically dropped $44 billion to say free speech, and is just sacrificing himself and getting attacked from left, right, and center constantly because he's trying to make things better rather than just do what's easy. We'll get along to go along.
Very well said. You know, I find what's very unique about Elon is that he is driven by missions and he articulates them and he's very clear about what they are and he sticks to his guns about why they're important and how he's going to get there. He finds a way to create the solution for that in a profitable, sustainable way that is very lucrative, that is aligned correctly with every party is making the right decisions. Like he's very careful about the alignment of incentives. And of course, you need to have you can't have a nonprofit that is paying hundreds of billions of dollars to solve world hunger, which was a great example, if you don't have some way to sustain that. And he said, why do you want me to give you, I'll give you 50 billion now if you want, 10 billion now, 5 billion, whatever. But
Yeah.
tell me, how are you going to solve world hunger? I tell you, by the way, that I have a theory myself that he is going to solve world hunger. And the reason is because, in Mars, you're going to need to have some way to create food. And I met him and his brother, Kimball, at the Gigafactory party one time. And I asked him, first principles, how would you solve world hunger? He went off and repeated the same things he's always said, which is actually there's no caloric deficit, which means that there's enough food out there. It's food, getting the right food to the right people at the right place. Politics and the war and all that and greed is where I mean, and then I asked his brother when I saw him, 2 minutes later, and I said, are you guys working on world hunger? And he said, yes. So makes sense for Kimball to be caring about this. So I think that there will be some sort of, I don't know, food regenerator or some sort of like at your home microwave of, something that can create something, but
a Star Trek replicator
or just some sort of like, maybe just, being able to, like what Kimball's been studying all this time is making food in different environments at your home or something like that. But, the point is that in order to solve something as big as world hunger, first principles, break it down, what is impossible by physics, and then figure out. But then he finds a way that is incentive properly so that every party, the person who's hungry, the person who's delivering the food, the person who's making the food, whatever it is all aligned properly. And that's the brilliance. Like the one example that's very clear is Robotaxi. And it's like, I don't know if anybody sees this. I mean, a few of us do, which is, how is it possible? Like, okay, if you look at all the other competitors, they are the ones buying the cars. They're outfitting it with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of LiDAR. They're hiring all these people to do teleoperation. They launch it there and they're proving the concept. But then when they roll this out, they have to be the one to buy the cars. Tesla figures out a way that people are paying them 10,000, 8,000, 12,000 to use FSD to beta test the software on their behalf.
It's brilliant.
How did they figure this out? And then it's they outfitted every single car they've ever sold since 2012 with video that's capturing all this data. And then when the time comes 10 years later that you have the technology to do it, in which he foresaw that AI is going to be there, you had all that data, all that video, all that captured. Anyways, you know what I mean? It's this idea that the business model was built in such a way that customers are paying for the cars, paying for the FSD, and then training
the software, as opposed to hiring somebody on 6 figures a year. And it's that just shows the guy's built different, It's such a big brain move, the contrast between Tesla's strategy for solving autonomy, where, as you mentioned, the customer buys the hardware, Tesla makes a huge profit on the hardware, then the customer voluntarily pays thousands of dollars for the software for them to be a paid beta tester. It's wild. And another great example is actually Starlink, which will fund Mars. Now, I don't think that originally Musk was thinking Starlink when he found SpaceX, but he is thinking, how the hell am I going to pay for Mars? Eventually, wait, if we've got extremely low cost to orbit, wait, we can launch internet. Oh shit, let me do the math on that. Oh wait, yeah, we could actually do this. And if we only capture like 3 to 5% of global internet users, suddenly we've got trillions of dollars potentially of profits over the long term to grow. And the best thing about Starlink at this point in time is, if you want to compete with Starlink and launch your own sort of global swarm of internet satellites, you have to use SpaceX as a low-cost launch provider. So even if you're trying to compete with them, it's got to be like Tesla licensing FSD to other companies, And so this is another great example of monetizing.
That part is the critical part, I think, that people are not talking about, which is licensing. Apple was a closed garden. Apple was very successful, created amazing products, disruptive industries, but they chose to not license this. And that's why you got the birth of Android and others. Not saying that won't happen with Tesla, because I think they do want to have, but they're doing it by giving it away. And I'll license it and I'll do it at cost. And you know what I mean? That's a big difference. Like, they're willing to share the technology that they've developed and spread it out, because they believe that, okay, doesn't matter. It becomes a commodity, but I'm on to the next thing. I'm on to the next thing. I'm going to create the next thing.
Well, they're very mission driven as well. Tesla's trying to get more miles driven electrically, and they also just care about safety. It's a no-brainer. Look, it's so obvious if you understand Tesla's values as a company that they were going to license FSD. It's so obvious. They try to do good. If they have a safe piece of software that's going to save tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of lives, injuries, permanent disabilities, the obvious thing is that they will license this to other companies if other companies do not have something that's comparably safe. That is obvious. People don't understand this because they don't understand Tesla's values as a company, but this was always inevitable. If Tesla had a safe piece of software that it was going to happen, they would at least offer other companies the opportunity to license. And still, there's no formal agreements yet. Well, licensing FSD was in my valuation model from day one back in 2021, and I've been thinking about it for a while before then. And still today, I don't think people realize how much of a lead Tesla has in terms of the safety profile of FSD. I call it unassailable for a reason. They have the data, and to catch up to Tesla is a close to impossible task because suddenly you need to put 6+ million, robots on roads collecting data with people training the software to get better and build the whole flywheel. I don't see that happening. So my thesis in terms of autonomy is that Tesla's going to have a superior product, and superior means safer, demonstrably so. It seems very obvious that a lot of companies are going to realize that if they want to still be in business, they're going to have to license autonomy, and it'll save a lot of lives. So humanity wins, everybody wins, these companies survive, Tesla wins. And yeah, this is a huge, huge, huge driver of future cash flows for Tesla that a lot of people aren't really considering either. I mean, it's massive because Tesla's already built the software.
Yeah, it's going to flip everything on its head. Like the example of people can't put in their head right now. The common trope is I'm going to buy a car. I'm going to spend $30,000-$50,000 for the car. Then it's a depreciating asset forever. It's going to flip now where the car is going to make me money. Not only in Robotaxi, but renting out the silicon, the chips, and the compute power that's in my car. I can rent that out, or I can store the energy in the battery and then sell it back to the grid. I can make money that way. And then
that's wild.
The only part I'm concerned about is insurance, because I think that they had hoped that the insurance would have been more than just the 12 states right now in the U.S. Because I think insurance, Tesla-owned insurance, is part of the the master plan, the master idea, right? Because if you had Tesla insurance and then you had a very, very safe car that's, whatever, supervised driving or not, but it's very, very safe, you reduce the chances of you causing accidents. You could take that money that people pay for insurance and turn it into the lease for the car, like portions of it, so that eventually the cost of a car is not the same as the cost of a car today, because you don't have to pay the insurance, or the insurance is part of it.
I think that it's inevitable that Tesla is going to have liability insurance. And in the 2016 master plan, they talked about autonomy subsidizing the cost of car ownership to help the transition. So whatever Tesla can do to lower the cost of ownership and or leasing, they're going to do. Again, these things are quite obvious. So, and also think that the rollout of Tesla insurance, even though it's give or take, a dozen states now, when they're on the edge of autonomy and that starts rolling out, there's going to be extremely strong incentives. Tesla's going to be kicking down the doors of regulators going, hurry up, guys, we need this. People are dying. Hello. Yeah. And I think that's going to be a very strong incentive to fast track approval.
That's the other brilliance of Elon Musk, is this ability to figure out the government and how to solve the government problem and how to make it so that it's in their best interest. And so how do you solve regulation for, autonomy, or regulations for, like you just said, insurance? Well, if I've got the data and I show you that data, you will be forced to do it. Now, if I go and pit China against India, which I think is what happened, by the way, now I'm curious what you think. He was about to visit Premier Modi, canceled the night before, said, oh, it's because my earnings called the next day. But he had scheduled it. Then, a few days later, he's in China, surprise visit, signs it. I think that it was this thing where China is very afraid. They want to control their, incredible, just they're out of nowhere. Now they own the electric vehicle market, the auto market. They've come out of nowhere, creating hundreds and hundreds of auto makers. Now going global, India wants to get in the game. They want to create their thing. They don't want to lose out. So he pits them together. And then because China says, hey, I'm going to let you have FSD here in the country, eventually Robotaxi, let's see if this is what plays out. All of a sudden, what other country can say no to regulations and autonomy if you've got China doing it? Now it becomes a political, the US better do it. Otherwise, you're going to let China get a technological lead over us.
Hmm.
It's like, it's just like, it truly is. Like, I used to laugh at people who say that Elon plays 7D chess,
Hmm.
3D chess became 4D chess, became 7.
Yep.
But
Yep.
sometimes when you look backwards and go, holy cow, how did he do this? This is like impossibilities, but he figured out a way, even at the political government level, that he's able to. Anyways.
Yeah, well, he's a brilliant diplomat and negotiator that a lot of people just can't accept, because he might say something that offends a few, people with blue hair and an absent father in California, and suddenly they assume that Elon just doesn't understand people or negotiation or But then you see what's actually happening. The first really clear example of this was the Gigafactory in Shanghai.
Mhm.
The CCP rolled out the red carpet, first fully owned foreign factory, never happened before. That was a huge holy crap moment. How did they do that? Then the CCP forced the local lenders to give them below market rate finance for the factory. And as soon as the announcement of the factory happened, they moved the import tariffs on existing Tesla vehicles while the factory's being built. This was stunning. I was so surprised to see this happen. I mean, I would have thought, all things being equal, the CCP would have said, look, you can come in, but you're going to have to partner with somebody locally. We want to give a home team an advantage. It's the complete opposite. Tesla got an unfair advantage from the CCP. That they really did roll the red carpet out. And this just goes to show how incredible Musk and the team at Tesla are in terms of politics and diplomacy. You don't get deals done like that. The CCP, an enemy of the United States, that doesn't happen unless you are incredible at building these relationships. Nor are you allowed to launch rockets and have rockets blow up and continue to do this sort of stuff as well, unless you really are incredible at this level of diplomacy, negotiation, and politics. I think a lot of people just get clouded by what's happening locally in the US and a few offended people and not really understand. But this is big stuff. And I don't think people really recognize it's so important. If you can get business done around the world and do so when there's tensions between nations as well, it's a hugely positive sign.
Okay. Well, we won't get to politics, but he's not doing a good job with diplomacy with his own government in the US.
Well, I would argue that, he doesn't really have much choice. He's counterpunching. The US government has been covering up.
It's like a shock why they did this, why they're attacking, and he has a counterpunch. I get that part. It's just that I wish that they weren't attacking the person that could actually, I guess, different opinions and all that. But I have this theory, and it's not a big theory or anything like that. He's able to shake hands with every dignitary, every country, prime minister, president, whatever. They all welcome him, and they want him to build. That he's going to build basically a mega pack factory. The reason he went to all those, in Europe, went around and met with every single, chief executive of the country, is because he's going to have, like, they were the top 9 of the 10 most, economic. The only one he didn't meet was Japan. But, they all want mega pack factories, and that's going to, every country needs to have, and you need mega packs for the data warehouses, and you need mega packs for the country itself. So, do you have a theory about that, or what might happen?
Well, I definitely think that there's going to be mega pack factories all over the place. It's obvious that localizing supply chain as much as possible and having as much of the mineral mining, refinement, and then the actual products being produced as close to where they're actually put into operation in terms of megapacks and vehicles makes sense. And given the scale of some of these projects, like megapacks are absolutely gigantic. There's a much stronger incentive to make those close to where they're being sold as opposed to vehicles, which you can ship by sea. And so it seems pretty clear over time there's going to be mega pack factories all over the place. Tesla's going to be selling boatloads of these things. They are money printers. The numbers on these things, this is not like a consumer product where people think, will people think I'm cool if I drive this? Or they're thinking, okay, what do the numbers look like? If we buy this mega pack, how much money do we start printing after X year? And it's a no-brainer of no-brainers. So demand for these packs is going to be insane. And it's obvious. If there's an area where you can either mine minerals locally or bring them for refinement and then actually compile cells and put the packs together, and you've got lower labor costs, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. A lot of people have speculated about a Tesla factory in India, and I'll be very surprised if they make vehicles there, but I won't be surprised at all if they're making batteries there. And this has been my speculation for some time now. Of course, I could be wrong. I'm not just some idiot who doesn't know anything, right? But to me, it makes a heck of a lot of sense. Anywhere there's affordable labor and you can either mine minerals locally or bring them in and then do refinement there, that Tesla's going to be producing batteries all over the place.
I also think that Tesla and Elon are also very, very lucky. It's hard for me to think that he thought this through, but the example would be in a couple of years, the most important thing in the world is going to be the rate limiting step is going to be batteries. It's going to be mega pack factories. Amazon just bought a data warehouse in the vicinity of a nuclear power plant. These power plant, you're creating these AI data warehouses, and they got so large, and they need the energy. And it turns out that Tesla has that. It has the skills and all that. I can't think that 5 years ago he had planned this out. Like, I guess he could have, because he was already he started OpenAI 5 years, before even started. So he must have thought this through and goes, my God, we need to be building these energy for that. But you know what I mean? Like, that seems so perfect that is where we're situated today.
Well, it's pretty clear we're going to have a major shortage of energy ASAP, big time. And I'll tell you what, I'd like to be in the business of making batteries if that was the case.
Yeah.
Anyone know any companies that happen to fit that description?
And the hiring of employees, they have this thing called I don't know what it was, but it's a first of its kind data warehouse is what they called it. It just made you think, what's a first of its kind data warehouse? It's probably a data warehouse that is connected to its own batteries, megapack source. I don't know, right? It's fun. It's partly why we're doing this, why you're doing this, and I'm doing it, because it is just never-ending fun. Every single day, there's news. Every day, there's something brand new technology, new things we're talking about. So thank you so much, Stephen. I appreciate this. This was a lot of fun, this talk. And
been a pleasure.
Yeah, learned a lot from you. Appreciate this. I think everybody knows you. My brother sent, the very first time I met you was obviously through one of your videos. My brother sent it to me, and that's how we discovered you, 2019, probably, when you first just got started. So I've been a long time fan of yours. Solving the Money Problems, his YouTube channel, and check him out. And I'm sure you know him already, so check me out. Thank you, Stephen.
Definitely.
Appreciate your time.
Cool. Pleasure, man.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.